The Great Hall of Valanthos Prime was silent. 300 delegates from across the galaxy sat in their seats, and not one of them spoke. The holographic display in the center of the room showed images that made even the oldest warriors look away. Cities burned. Ships exploded in the darkness of space. Millions of beings were marched into camps where they would work until they died. The Cathari Dominion had come to the outer systems, and everything in their path was destroyed. Ambassador Thryn stood at the center of the hall. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms and large black eyes that reflected the horror on the screens. His species, the Veloxi, had been part of the Galactic Council for 2,000 years. In all that time, he had never seen fear like this. 17 systems, he said. His voice was calm, but his hand shook slightly. 17 systems have fallen in 2 cycles. The combined fleets of 6 allied species engaged the Cathari at the Voran Nebula. They were destroyed in less than 3 hours. A murmur went through the crowd. The battle at Voran had been their best hope. 800 warships from the most powerful species in the Alliance had gathered there. They had outnumbered the Cathari 2 to 1. It had not mattered. Elder Corvan rose from his seat. He was ancient, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His scales had faded from bright green to pale gray, and he moved slowly. But when he spoke, every being in the room listened. "We have tried everything," he said. "We have sent our best ships. We have used our most advanced weapons. We have fought with honor and courage. And we have failed." He paused and looked around the room. His yellow eyes were tired but still sharp. "There is one option we have not tried. One species we have not called upon." The silence that followed was different from before. This silence was heavy with something close to dread. "No," said a delegate from the Morati Collective. He was a small creature covered in blue fur, and his voice was high and frightened. "You cannot mean the humans. They are dangerous, unpredictable. They do not follow the rules of war." "The Cathari do not follow the rules of war either," Corvan replied. "They kill prisoners. They enslave children. They burn worlds for sport. Perhaps we need someone who can match them." Thryn felt cold. He had read the files on humans. Every ambassador had. The species had been discovered 80 years ago, living on a small blue planet in an unremarkable system. They were young by galactic standards, barely able to travel between their own worlds. When the assessment teams had visited Earth, they had expected to find another primitive species. Instead, they had found something that made them very uncomfortable. The humans had a history unlike any other species in the known galaxy. They had spent most of their existence fighting each other. War after war after war, for thousands of years, using weapons and tactics that grew more terrible with each generation. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was that they were good at it. The assessment teams had given humans a classification that had never been used before. Not soldiers, which meant a species that could fight. Not warriors, which meant a species that lived to fight. They had called humans something else entirely. Special Forces. It meant a species that was too dangerous to fight directly. It meant a species that should be avoided at all costs. It meant that if you went to war with humans, you would not just lose. You would be destroyed in ways you could not imagine. "They have never lost a war," Corvan continued. "In their entire history, when humans truly commit to a conflict, they win. Always. They find ways to victory that no other species would consider. They adapt. They improvise. They endure suffering that would break any other being. And they never, ever give up. That is exactly why they are dangerous," Thryn said. He did not want to argue with Corvan, but someone had to speak the truth. Humans do not know when to stop. They do not accept surrender easily. They hold grudges for generations. If we bring them into this war, we cannot control what they will do. Can we control what the Cathari will do? Korvan asked. Can we stop them from burning more worlds? Can we save the 4 billion beings who are right now suffering in their labor camps? Thryn had no answer. A delegate from the Sirith Collective spoke up. She was covered in smooth gray skin, and her voice was soft and musical. What do the humans want? If we ask for their help, what will they demand in return? That is the strange thing, Korvan said. When they were offered membership in the council 80 years ago, they refused. They said they were not ready. They said they had work to do on themselves first. They asked only to be left alone. And we have left them alone, the Sirith delegate said. We have avoided their system. We have not contacted them. Now we come asking for help? Why would they agree? Korvan was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Thryn would remember for the rest of his life. Because humans do not like bullies. It is one of the few things about them that makes sense. When they see someone hurting someone weaker, something inside them becomes angry. They cannot help it. It is part of who they are. The vote took place 1 hour later. It was close. Many delegates voted against contacting the humans, too afraid of what might happen. But in the end, fear of the Cathari was greater than fear of the humans. The motion passed by 12 votes. Thryn was chosen to lead the delegation. He did not want this honor, but he could not refuse. As he prepared to leave for Earth, Korvan came to speak with him privately. Be careful, the old reptile said. Be honest with them. Tell them everything, even the parts that make us look bad. Humans can smell lies the way a predator smells blood. If you try to trick them, they will know. And they will not help us. What if they refuse anyway? Thryn asked. Korvan's eyes were sad. Then we are already dead. The Cathari will conquer us all, one system at a time. And the galaxy will belong to monsters. Thryn boarded his ship and set course for a small blue world that most species avoided. He carried with him the hopes of 100 civilizations. And he prayed to gods he did not believe in that the humans would listen. He did not know that on Earth they had been watching the war. He did not know that human commanders had already begun making plans. And he did not know that when humans went to war, they did not fight to win. They fought to make sure no one would ever dare challenge them again. Armstrong Station hung above the gray surface of Luna like a silver flower. It was the largest structure humans had ever built in space, home to 50,000 people and the headquarters of the United Earth Defense Force. It was also the place where aliens came when they wanted to talk to humanity. Commander Grace Holloway stood in the reception bay and watched the alien ship approach through the massive windows. She was 53 years old, with dark hair turning gray at the temples and eyes that had seen too much death. She had fought in 3 wars on Earth before joining the space program. She knew what violence looked like. She knew what it cost. They're docking now, Commander, said Lieutenant Danny Ortiz. He was young, barely 25, with an eager face and hands that could not stay still. This was his first time meeting aliens. He was trying very hard not to show how excited he was. I can see that, Danny, Grace said. Her voice was calm and dry. Try not to stare at them. Some species find it rude. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Thryn stepped through first, his forearms folded in a gesture of peace. Behind him came 2 assistants carrying data devices and translation equipment. Grace studied the alien carefully. He was nervous. She could see it in the way his large eyes moved, the way his feet shuffled slightly. Good. Nervous people told the truth. Ambassador Thryn, she said. Welcome to Armstrong Station. I am Commander Grace Holloway. I speak for Earth in military matters. Thryn bowed his head. Commander Holloway, thank you for receiving us. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. So do I. Please, come with me. We have prepared a conference room. They walked through the station in silence. Grace noticed how Thryn looked at everything, the soldiers in the corridors, the weapons on their hips, the hard expressions on their faces. She wondered what he was thinking. Probably the same thing every alien thought when they visited Earth. These beings are dangerous. The conference room was simple and clean. A long table, comfortable chairs, screens on the walls. Grace sat at one end. Thryn sat at the other. Danny stood by the door, trying to be invisible. "Show me," Grace said. Thryn activated his data device. The screens around the room came alive with images and video. The same images he had shown the Galactic Council, but with more detail. More horror. Grace watched without expression. She saw cities destroyed by orbital bombardment. She saw families separated, children taken from parents. She saw labor camps where beings worked until they collapsed, then were dragged away and replaced. She saw mass graves filled with bodies that no one had bothered to count. When the presentation ended, the room was silent for a long moment. "How many?" Grace asked. Thryn did not understand. How many what? How many civilians are still alive in the occupied territories? How many people are we trying to save? The ambassador blinked his large eyes. Approximately 4 billion sentient beings remain in occupied space. Most are in labor camps or breeding facilities. Breeding facilities? The Kethari use conquered species for various purposes. Some are workers. Some are food. Some are bred to produce more workers and food. Danny made a small sound of disgust. Grace did not react at all. Her face was like stone. "What do you want from us?" she asked. Thryn leaned forward. "We want your help. The Galactic Council has voted to request human assistance in defeating the Kethari Dominion. We will provide ships, supplies, intelligence. Anything you need. You want us to fight your war for you. We want you to fight alongside us. We have tried everything else. Nothing has worked. The Kethari are too strong, too brutal. They do not follow the rules of civilized warfare. Neither do we." The words hung in the air. Thryn stopped speaking and stared at the human woman. "Let me be clear about something," Grace said. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "Humans do not fight wars the way other species do. We do not line up our ships and exchange fire until someone retreats. We do not follow rules that make killing more comfortable. When we go to war, we do whatever it takes to win." She turned to face him. "We will lie. We will cheat. We will use weapons and tactics that your council would call dishonorable. We will break the enemy's will to fight, not just their ability to fight. We will make them afraid to close their eyes at night. And when it is over, they will not just be defeated. They will be destroyed." Thryn felt cold again. This was what he had been afraid of. "Commander, the Galactic Council has certain expectations about how wars should be conducted. There are laws. Did the Kethari follow those laws when they burned cities? Did they follow those laws when they put children in breeding facilities?" Grace's voice was still calm, but there was something dangerous underneath. "Your laws are designed for species that play fair. We are not going to play fair. We are going to win." The ambassador was silent for a long time. Finally, he asked, "What do you want in return? Territory? Resources? Political power?" Grace shook her head. "We do not want anything. We are not doing this for reward. Then why? Why would you fight and die for species you have never met?" It was Danny who answered. He spoke without thinking, and then looked embarrassed. But his words were honest. "Because it is wrong," he said. "What they are doing is wrong, and someone has to stop them." Grace looked at her young lieutenant with something like pride. Then she turned back to Thryn. "Earth will send help. We will send our best people and our best ships. But I need you to understand something, Ambassador. Once we get involved, there is no going back. The Cathari will learn what happens when you hurt innocent people. They will learn why every species in the galaxy avoids our system. They will become an example. She stepped closer to the alien, and her eyes were hard. Is your council prepared for that? Are you prepared to watch us do what needs to be done? Thrin thought about the 4 billion beings in labor camps. He thought about the children in breeding facilities. He thought about the 17 systems that had already burned. Yes, he said. We are prepared. Grace nodded slowly. Then we have an agreement. Go back to your council and tell them help is coming. Tell them to pull their remaining fleets back to safe positions. And tell them to stay out of our way. How long until your forces arrive? Grace smiled. It was not a warm smile. We have been watching your war for 6 months, Ambassador. Our ships left Earth orbit 3 days ago. They will reach Cathari space in 6 weeks. Thrin stared at her. You were already coming? Before we asked? We were coming to observe. Now we are coming to fight. Grace walked to the door. Danny will show you back to your ship. Safe travels, Ambassador. The next time we meet, this war will be over. As Thrin left Armstrong Station, he realized something that made his stomach turn. The humans had not needed to be convinced. They had not needed to be bribed or threatened. They had seen innocent people suffering, and they had decided to act, and that, he understood now, was what made them truly terrifying. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Cathari space. 12 ships. That was all. 12 small vessels against an empire that had conquered 40 species. Admiral Ben Castillo stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiance and looked at the stars. He was a big man with broad shoulders and a gentle face that smiled easily. He looked like someone's favorite uncle, the kind of man who told jokes at family dinners and played with children in the yard. He did not look like a man who had won 3 wars and never lost a single battle. All ships reporting ready. Admiral, said Lieutenant Commander Nadia Price. She was his tactical officer. A sharp-minded woman with quick eyes and quicker thoughts. She had already analyzed every piece of intelligence about the Cathari military. She had found 17 weaknesses in their defensive formations. She had not shared this information with anyone except Ben. Good, Ben said. Let them see us. The Defiance powered up its systems and broadcast its location openly. Within minutes, Cathari sensors had detected the human fleet. Within hours, the Dominarch himself was responding. Vreth appeared on the view screen like a nightmare-given form. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin and 4 eyes that glowed with cruel intelligence. His species had evolved as apex predators on a harsh world, and they had carried that predator instinct to the stars. Humans? Vreth said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. I have heard stories about your species. I am not impressed. You come to my territory with 12 ships. This is not a fleet. This is an insult. Ben smiled. It was a warm, friendly smile, the kind of smile you might give a neighbor. Dominarch Vreth, thank you for the quick response. We appreciate your attention. Vreth's 4 eyes narrowed. He was not used to being thanked. You are either brave or stupid. Perhaps both. I have conquered 40 species. My warriors number in the billions. What can 12 ships do against the might of the Cathari Dominion? I guess we will find out, Ben said. He was still smiling. But before we begin, I want to thank you for something else. What? This transmission. You have been broadcasting for nearly 3 minutes now. That is more than enough time for us to trace the signal back to your flagship. We now know exactly where you are. The smile did not change, but something in Ben's eyes did. Something cold appeared there, something that made even Vreth feel a small chill. "See you soon, Dominarch." The transmission ended. Vreth immediately ordered his fleet to change position. He was angry at himself for making such a simple mistake. But surely it did not matter. 12 ships could not threaten his empire. 12 ships would be destroyed in minutes. He was wrong. The human fleet did not attack. Instead, it scattered. The 12 ships split apart and vanished into the darkness of space. Cathari sensors lost track of them almost immediately. The humans were using some kind of stealth technology that the Dominion had never encountered before. For 3 days, nothing happened. The Cathari waited for battle. The battle did not come. On the 4th day, a supply station on the edge of Cathari space exploded. There were no human ships anywhere nearby. Investigation revealed that someone had planted charges in the fuel storage tanks. But how? The station had been heavily guarded. On the 5th day, a Cathari general was found dead in his quarters. His door had been locked from the inside. His guards had heard nothing. There was no sign of forced entry, no evidence of how the killer had gotten in or out. The only clue was a small piece of paper left on the body. It said, "We are watching." On the 6th day, 3 Cathari warships reported strange malfunctions. Their weapon systems stopped working. Their engines failed. Their life support began pumping in a gas that made the crew fall asleep. By the time other ships arrived to help, small teams of human soldiers had already boarded. They freed the prisoners being held in the cargo bays, then destroyed the ships from the inside. Vreth demanded reports. How was this happening? Where were the humans? His commanders had no answers. They had never seen warfare like this. Battles were supposed to be fought between fleets. Ships were supposed to face each other and fire until one side won. This was something different. This was hunting. Ambassador Thryn watched the reports from a safe distance on a station far from the fighting. He had been assigned to observe the human campaign and report back to the Galactic Council. What he saw made him understand, finally, why humans were classified as special forces. They did not fight armies. They fought minds. Every attack was designed to create fear. Every destroyed station, every dead officer, every mysterious malfunction sent a message. You are not safe. We can reach you anywhere. We can kill you at any time. You do not know when we will strike next. Within 2 weeks, the Cathari military was falling apart. Not from losses. They had barely lost any ships in direct combat. But morale was collapsing. Soldiers refused to sleep. Officers argued with each other about strategy. Supply lines broke down because no one knew which routes were safe. Vreth ordered his fleet to gather in one place, where they could protect each other. This was exactly what Ben Castillo wanted. The Battle of Karth Nebula lasted 6 hours. The Cathari outnumbered the humans 20-1. They formed a defensive sphere, weapons pointed outward, ready to destroy anything that approached. The humans did not approach from outside. They had already planted teams inside the sphere during the chaotic 2 weeks of hunting. Small groups of soldiers, hidden on asteroids, on debris, on the hulls of Cathari ships themselves. When the battle began, they attacked from within. Nadia Price coordinated the assault from the Defiance. She watched her screens and gave orders with a calm voice. Team 7, target the flagship's sensor array. Team 12, disable the command ship's engines. All fighters, prepare for attack. Run on my signal. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. The Cathari did not know where to aim. Enemies were everywhere, inside their formation, inside their ships, appearing from nowhere and vanishing just as quickly. Their commanders screamed orders that no one followed. Their weapons fired wildly, hitting their own vessels as often as enemy targets. When it was over, the Cathari had lost 300 ships. The humans had lost 4. Vreth escaped. His flagship fled to the homeworld, surrounded by what remained of his once mighty fleet. He was afraid now. He had finally understood what he was facing. Humans did not fight to defeat their enemies. They fought to destroy them completely. Ben Castillo watched the retreating Cathari ships on his view screen. His gentle smile was gone now, replaced by something harder. Something tired. "Sir," Nadia asked, "do we pursue?" "Not yet," Ben said. "We have work to do first. There are 4 billion people in those labor camps. We save them before we finish this. And Vreth? He will wait. He has nowhere to run." Ben turned away from the screen. "Send word to the ground teams. It is time to start freeing prisoners." Far away, on a station at the edge of known space, Thrin wrote his report to the Galactic Council. He wrote about human tactics and human technology. He wrote about the fear he had seen in Cathari eyes. And at the end, he wrote a warning. Do not ever give humans a reason to fight you. Because once they start, they will not stop until you are broken. And they will make sure you never forget what they did to you. The planet was called Sirith IV. It was a cold world with gray skies and endless plains of frozen mud. Before the Cathari came, it had been home to 2 million Veluxi. Now it was a prison. The processing facility sat in the middle of the largest plain, a massive structure of black metal and dirty concrete. 60,000 Veluxi were kept inside, working in the factories that produced weapons for the Dominion. They worked 16 hours a day. They were fed barely enough to survive. When they died, their bodies were burned and new prisoners were brought in to replace them. 3,000 Cathari warriors guarded the facility. They had heavy weapons, armored vehicles, and air support. They were confident that no force could take the prison from them. Sergeant Katie Dunn looked at the facility through her binoculars and smiled. 3,000 guards, she said. That is a lot for 8 people to handle. Her team lay in the frozen mud beside her, hidden under thermal blankets that made them invisible to sensors. There were 7 of them, not counting Katie. Each one was a specialist: explosives, communications, medical, combat. Together, they had been trained to do impossible things. "Orders, Sergeant?" asked Private First Class Leo Martinez. He was the youngest member of the team, barely 19, but his hands were steady and his eyes were sharp. "We do not attack the guards," Katie said. "We attack their minds." For the next week, Katie's team became ghosts. They moved through the territory around the prison, never staying in one place for long. Every night, they struck. The first night, they killed 2 guards who were patrolling the lawn. They left the bodies where they would be found, with messages carved into the frozen ground beside them. "We see you." The second night, they sabotaged a supply convoy. The vehicles exploded one by one as the Cathari watched helplessly. No one saw who had planted the bombs. The third night, they infiltrated the officers' quarters. They did not kill anyone. They just moved things. They rearranged furniture. They left human boot prints on the floor. When the officers woke up, they realized that enemies had been standing over them while they slept. By the 4th night, the guards had stopped sleeping. They huddled together in groups, weapons ready, jumping at every sound. Katie's team did not attack that night. They did not need to. Fear was doing their work for them. The camp commander sent desperate messages to Cathari High Command, begging for reinforcements. The response was always the same: no reinforcements available. Every other garrison in the sector was dealing with the same problem. Human teams were everywhere, striking without warning, vanishing before anyone could respond. On the 7th night, Katie's team broadcast a message to the prisoners inside the facility. They used a frequency that only Veluxi could hear. The message was simple: help is coming. Be ready. The next morning, the prisoners began to resist. They worked slowly. They made mistakes. They broke machines and pretended it was an accident. The guards punished them, but there were 60,000 prisoners and only 3,000 guards. The punishments could not be everywhere at once. Meanwhile, on the other side of Cathari space, Admiral Ben Castillo was playing a different game. He had tracked Vreth's flagship to the Dominion homeworld. The planet was called Keth Prime, a harsh desert world where the Cathari had evolved into the galaxy's most feared predators. Vreth had gathered his remaining fleet there, still massive, still powerful, still outnumbering the humans by impossible odds. Ben did not attack the fleet. Instead, he did something that Vreth never expected. He talked to the people. Human ships broadcast messages directly to Cathari civilian communication networks. The messages were in the Cathari language, spoken by human voices that had learned every tone and inflection perfectly. The messages showed footage that the Dominion government had kept secret. They showed what Cathari soldiers had really done in the conquered territories. The labor camps, the breeding facilities, the mass graves, the children screaming for parents they would never see again. Your government told you these people were enemies, the messages said. Your government told you this war was necessary. Your government lied. Your warriors have been committing crimes against innocent beings, and the galaxy has sent us to stop them. At first, the Cathari people did not believe it. They had been told all their lives that their military was honorable, that their conquests brought order to primitive species. But the evidence was overwhelming. The footage was real. The faces of the victims were real. Doubt spread like a disease. Citizens began asking questions. Why had the government hidden this? What else had they lied about? How many innocent beings had died in their name? Vreth was furious. He ordered the broadcasts jammed, the sources destroyed. But the humans had hidden their transmitters too well. The messages kept coming, day after day, wearing down the walls of propaganda that had kept the Cathari people obedient. Riots broke out in 3 major cities. Citizens demanded answers. Some demanded an end to the war. Some demanded that their leaders face justice for what had been done. Vreth's own officers began to question him. They had believed they were warriors, not monsters. Now, they were not sure what they were. On Sirith 4, Katie's team finally moved on the processing facility. It was the 10th night. The guards were exhausted, afraid, and demoralized. Half of them had not slept in days. The other half were too paranoid to focus on anything. The attack came from everywhere at once. Katie led the assault on the main gate, while her team hit secondary targets around the facility. Explosions lit up the night. The power grid failed. Emergency lights flickered and died in the darkness. The guards panicked. They fired at shadows, at each other, at anything that moved. They had been trained to fight armies. They had not been trained to fight fear. The prisoners heard the chaos and understood. They broke free from their barracks and overwhelmed the guards who were supposed to be watching them. 60,000 beings who had been beaten and starved and worked nearly to death discovered that they still had strength. They still had rage. By dawn, the facility was free. Katie's team had lost one member. Private Martinez had been shot during the initial assault. He died with a smile on his face, knowing that the mission had succeeded. Katie knelt beside his body and closed his eyes. "You did good, Leo," she whispered. "You did real good." She stood up and looked at the thousands of freed prisoners gathering in the courtyard. They were thin and weak, but they were alive. They were free. She activated her communicator. "Command, this is Sergeant Dunn. Sirith 4 processing facility is secured. 60,000 prisoners liberated. One casualty on our side." Admiral Castillo's voice came back, warm and proud. "Outstanding work, Sergeant. Evac ships are on the way. Get those people ready to move." "Yes, sir." Katie paused. "Sir, when do we go home?" There was a long silence. Then Ben said, "Not yet, Katie. Not yet. But soon. We are almost done." Katie looked at the sky, where the first light of dawn was breaking through the gray clouds. She thought about Leo Martinez, 19 years old, who had died to free people he had never met. "It better be worth it," she said quietly to herself. "It better be worth it." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Human teams were freeing prisoners on a dozen worlds. Cathari garrisons were surrendering or retreating. The Dominion's grip on its conquered territories was breaking, and on Keth Prime, Dominarch Vreth watched his empire crumble and knew that he had only one choice left. He would have to face the humans directly. One final battle. Winner take all. He began gathering his fleet for the last stand of the Cathari Dominion. The final battle began above Keth Prime, under a sky filled with 1,000 warships. Dominarch Vreth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and watched the human fleet approach. His remaining forces still outnumbered the humans 50 to 1. He had gathered every ship, every warrior, every weapon the Dominion had left. This would be the end, one way or another. "Broadcast to all frequencies," Vreth ordered. His voice was cold and hard. "I want the humans to hear this." The communications officer obeyed. Vreth spoke to the stars. "Humans, you have fought well. You have used tricks and deception to weaken my empire. But tricks will not save you now. Face me in honorable combat, fleet against fleet. Fight like warriors, not like cowards. Or run back to your little planet and be known forever as the species that hid from the Cathari." He waited for a response. When it came, it was not what he expected. Admiral Ben Castillo appeared on the view screen. He was sitting in his command chair, looking relaxed, almost peaceful. That gentle smile was back on his face. "Dominarch Vreth," Ben said, "I accept your challenge. We will meet your fleet in direct combat." Vreth's 4 eyes narrowed. This had to be a trick. "You accept? No conditions? No demands?" "No conditions. Fleet against fleet, just like you wanted. But I should warn you about something first." "What?" Ben leaned forward slightly. "We are going to lose some ships in this battle. We know that. We have accepted it. The question is, how many of your warriors are willing to die today? Because I promise you, Dominarch, for every one of us that falls, 100 of yours will fall with them." The transmission ended. The battle began. The Cathari fleet advanced in a massive wave, confident in their numbers. Human ships met them head-on, weapons blazing. For the first time in the war, the two forces fought the traditional way ship against ship, fire against fire. The humans took heavy losses in the opening minutes. 4 carriers were destroyed. 2 cruisers were badly damaged. The Cathari pressed their advantage, pouring fire into the human formation dot, and then the trap sprung. The destroyed human ships were not dead. They had been designed to look destroyed, to drift like wreckage while their crews stayed alive inside. And those crews were not ordinary sailors. They were boarding teams. Hundreds of soldiers trained for exactly this moment. From the floating wreckage, small craft launched in every direction. They were fast and hard to track, built for one purpose: to reach enemy ships and cut their way inside. Vreth realized what was happening too late. All ships, defensive positions, prepared to repel boarders. But the humans were already inside. They moved through Cathari vessels like water through cracks, targeting the systems that mattered most: engines, life support, weapons, bridge, crews. Ships that had been firing moments ago went dark and drifted. Officers were killed at their stations. Warriors found themselves fighting in the corridors of their own vessels, against enemies who knew exactly where to strike. Captain Marcus Webb led the team that boarded the Eternal Conquest. He was 42 years old, quiet and serious, with gray eyes that had seen too many battles. He had been fighting since he was 18. He had hoped, when he was young, that one day there would be no more wars. Now he knew better. His team cut through the flagship's defenses with brutal efficiency. They moved through smoke-filled corridors, stepping over the bodies of Cathari warriors. The sound of gunfire echoed through the ship. They found Vreth in the command center, surrounded by his personal guard. The Dominarch was standing in the middle of the room, a massive weapon in each of his 4 hands. He was not going to surrender. "Come then," Vreth growled. "Let us see if humans die as easily as they kill." The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. Vreth was a skilled warrior, stronger and faster than any human. But Marcus and his team had been training for this moment their entire lives. They worked together like parts of a single machine, covering each other, creating openings, exploiting weaknesses. When it was over, Vreth lay on the floor of his own command center. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, but still alive. Marcus stood over him, weapon ready. "Finish it," Vreth said. His voice was weak but proud. "Give me a warrior's death." Marcus lowered his weapon. "No." Vreth's 4 eyes widened in confusion. "What? We did not come here to kill you, Dominarch. We came here to end the war." Marcus knelt down so he was at eye level with the fallen leader. "Here is what is going to happen. You will order your remaining ships to surrender. You will release every prisoner in Cathari territory. You will pay reparations to every species you have harmed. And you will never wage aggressive war again. And if I refuse?" Marcus's gray eyes were cold. "Then we leave. We go back to Earth and wait. And in 5 years, or 10 years, or 20 years, when your people have rebuilt, we come back. And next time, there will be no surrender. No negotiations. We will burn Keth Prime to ash and salt the ground so nothing ever grows here again." He leaned closer. "We did not want to do that. We did not want any of this. But we will do whatever it takes to make sure innocent people are safe. So make your choice, Dominarch. Peace or extinction." Vreth was silent for a long moment. Outside the viewports, his fleet was falling apart. Ships were surrendering. Others were trying to flee. The battle was over. Why? Vreth asked finally. His voice was barely a whisper. "Why do you fight so hard for species you have never met? What do they matter to you?" Marcus stood up. He thought about all the wars he had fought, all the friends he had lost, all the terrible things he had seen and done. He thought about the labor camps and the breeding facilities. He thought about the children. "Humans spent most of our history hurting each other," he said. "We got very good at it. Better than anyone else in the galaxy. For a long time, we thought that was all we were, a species of killers. But then we looked at the stars and realized something." He looked at Vreth with something that might have been pity. "We realized we could use all that skill, all that violence, for something better. We could protect people instead of hurting them. We could stop monsters instead of being monsters." He paused. "We are still learning how to be good. It is hard. We make mistakes. But we keep trying." Vreth closed his eyes. "I will give the order. The war is over." 1 year later, Ambassador Thryn stood before the Galactic Council. Behind him, holographic displays showed images of rebuilt cities, freed prisoners returning home, Cathari leaders standing trial for their crimes. "The war is ended," Thryn announced. "The Cathari Dominion has been dismantled. 4 billion beings have been freed. A new era of peace has begun." The council chamber erupted in celebration. Delegates embraced each other. Some wept with relief, but Thryn raised his hand for silence. His face was serious. "I must add a warning to my report," he said. "The humans have returned to their own system. They asked for nothing in return for their service. No territory. No tribute. No special status. They simply went home. The council was confused. This was not how species behaved after winning wars. This generosity, Trin continued, is perhaps the most frightening thing about them, because it means that when humans fight, they do not fight for conquest or profit. They fight because they believe it is right. And a species that fights for belief is a species that will never stop. He looked around the room at the delegates who had once been so afraid. We have formally invited Earth to join the Council as a full member. Commander Grace Holloway has accepted on behalf of her species. She asked only one thing in return, that humans be called upon only when truly needed. And what did she mean by that? Asked Elder Corvon. Thrin remembered his last conversation with the human commander. She had smiled, a rare thing, and said something that still echoed in his mind. She said that humans are still learning how to be good. They have work to do on themselves. They want to become better than they are. He paused. I believe she meant that they hope, one day, to be known for something other than war. The council was silent, somewhere in the darkness between stars, on distant worlds ruled by predator species. Stories spread about what had happened to the Cathari. Stories about a small species from an unremarkable planet. Stories about beings who fought without mercy and asked for nothing in return. Stories about the special forces. One by one, the predators looked at their own empires and their own ambitions. They thought about the labor camps they might build, the species they might conquer, the innocents they might harm. And then they thought about the humans. They decided to stay in their own territories. The galaxy had found its guardians. And the guardians were watching. Always watching.